Then I say, should the U.S. have completely open and closed borders?
Okay, let's do that one.
That's the only one I can relate to.
Okay, so before we start, are you from around here?
Yeah.
Where are you
LA.
from? Are you from LA?
Yeah. Huh?
Oh. So what do? You just hiking up here?
Yeah, just hiking. My dog right here.
What's your dog's name?
Lucky.
Oh yeah, cool. What kind of dog is it?
It's a German Shepherd mixed with a Husky.
Oh really? I have a husky. Is he a rescued mutt?
No.
Oh.
No.
Yeah, I've rescued both of my dogs. All right, cool. So tell me what you want to talk about again.
Should the U.S. have open or closed borders?
Okay. So when here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna flip that over, and we have 5 minutes to talk about it.
All right. Are you gonna ask me a question or just talk about it? Just randomly talk about it.
Well, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
All right.
Don't be nervous, man. There's no gotchas.
I'm calm.
There's no gotchas here or anything.
I'm cool, calm, and collected.
All right, cool.
Cool,
so
calm, and collected.
read the question again.
Where's it at?
Should the U.S. have open borders?
Yeah. So should the U.S. have completely open / closed borders?
Yeah. What do you think?
President thinks you have open borders.
So what do you mean by open borders?
So in this case, the first thing you need to do is understand what he means by that.
If we're talking about immigration, I think we should have open borders. You know, it's a place where, it's colonized.
So usually when you hear a phrase like that right from the get-go, colonized, it made sense to me that he would be arguing for open borders. So I was thinking that he participates in a worldview. How critical and thoughtful he was about that, I wouldn't have known until subsequent questions.
You know, it's like the U.S. is the only country that have borders, that have a complete border line. You know what I'm saying?
No.
Okay, so that's important. So a lot of people say, you know what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying. And almost always I'll say no, because usually I've found that if someone says, you know what I'm saying, they don't even know what they're saying. Or they know what they're saying, but they feel that they said, you know what I'm saying, because they didn't articulate it clearly enough. And when you say no to that, it forces them to re-articulate it. Also, when people say, you know what I'm saying, if you say no, they're not used to people saying no to, you know what I'm saying. They're used to people nodding or saying yes. So I found when someone says, you know what I'm saying, unless I'm absolutely positive that I know what they're saying, I say yes. Otherwise, I say no.
So, like, there's no other country in the world that has a border.
That was an absolutely astonishing statement to me. So I naturally assumed that okay, first of all, two things. From the book, take the most charitable interpretation of what someone is saying. Second of all, when I heard that, I was so astonished by that. My first instinct, and this is very hard to kill this instinct if you should kill it at all, was that couldn't possibly be true. Instead, place the burden of understanding upon yourself and say, geez, maybe I've misunderstood what this claim is. Not he didn't articulate it or she didn't articulate it clearly, but I have misunderstood.
You know, there's only lines. You know, it's like imaginary lines that define borders, right? But the U.S., the only country that wants to do, are really like.
But maybe I'm not getting it.
So maybe I'm not getting it. Again, placing the burden on yourself and then re-articulating it back to somebody.
Doesn't like China have borders?
Yeah, it has a border, but it's a border that is in China. It does not divide China with a different country.
So now I'm really confused. The border of China does not divide China with a different country. So China with Russia, I still wasn't, either he was harboring some really remarkable misunderstanding about reality, or I was just not understanding the claim, or I was harboring a misunderstanding of reality. I don't think the third thing was possible. So either he was harboring a fundamental misunderstanding of borders and what borders are, or I'm not understanding the claim.
Wait, doesn't it divide China and Russia?
No.
Really?
Yeah.
So, okay, so any facts, still not sure I understood the claim. Any facts at this point, it's utterly pointless.
Maybe I'm not understanding. So what do you mean by that? What do you mean?
What do you mean by that? It's good, uses the word you, which is not ideal, but in some cases, what do you mean by that? Or what does that mean? But I think in that case, the defensive posture will not be invoked.
Like we have a border here that people can go to. I don't think I'm understanding.
So for example, right?
Yeah.
So basically, basically the Great Wall of China was a border divided two different nations at that time that,
Right.
that were in China, right? I don't remember the destinies, but it was two different
Yeah.
nations that were in China. So it does not divide China in a different country.
Okay.
It just divides China.
Okay.
It's like kind of like between.
All right, so let's go with that. Let's say that the United States is the only country that has borders.
Yeah.
Which was utterly remarkable to me. The United States is the only country that has borders, but what would be the point of bringing in evidence for other borders? Then the whole conversation would just devolve into, yes, it is, no, it isn't. I'm delivering a message, he's delivering a message, and that makes it a message delivery service. So what you can do is you can just accept the claim and see if a claim that's clearly factually incorrect follows, or a conclusion that's based upon a factually incorrect premise follows. It's a weird way to think about how to have a conversation with someone, but it really is an excellent way to proceed so that you don't make it a message delivery service and people end up getting frustrated.
So you think we shouldn't have borders because no other countries have borders?
Yeah, basically.
So what if other countries started having borders? Should we have borders then?
So that's a variation of disconfirmation. So if it's a variation, very loose variation. So what if other countries started having borders? So the idea then, it's a kind of naturalistic fallacy that because other countries do this, or because X does this, we should too. But it will undermine the claim if you say, well, what if other people start doing this? Shouldn't you do it? So it keeps the reasoning intact, but it shifts the data points, hypothetically.
No, so I just feel like the reason why the U.S. wants to make borders is not.
Interesting use of the word feel there as opposed to think.
There's no real reason behind it. Just because they're just making it because.
All right, so here's a scale.
Okay, so at this point, it's time to bring in scales. I could not have brought in scales, and I could have drilled down. Notice I did not contradict the idea that there are no borders, etc. Although I will admit, in no uncertain terms, it was more than lingering in my brain, because I really was harboring the idea that, geez, maybe I've still not understood this because I don't understand. That seems clearly factually incorrect to me.
I'm completely confident there should. I'm completely confident there should be no borders. I'm not sure. Maybe there should be borders. I don't have any idea what I'm talking about. Where would you place yourself on that scale?
No borders.
Oh my God, you're like off the scale. Oh,
I'm off
dude,
the
wow,
scale.
that's pretty intense. Okay.
So he is completely confident in that claim. It's really fascinating when you think about it.
So what would I have to show? Like, what would change your mind? What would lower you from being off the scale to like being there?
Again, disconfirmation question right here. But it's a disconfirmation question that starts with the assumptions that he already brings to the table, which is fine. A lot of people think you have to correct these mistaken assumptions. You don't. You can just look at it as a syllogism. Even if the premises of the syllogism are incorrect, it could be that the syllogism is valid but not sound. So validity just means it relates to the structure of the argument, and soundness means that it's structure plus truth. So he could have factually incorrect premises, but his conclusion could follow. So there could be some validity to his reasoning here. We just need to see if that's true, and the only way to do that is to just accept that his premises are true. The problem in this case was that they were just so obviously false that I was having difficulty doing that.
Like, what would do that?
Nothing. Fascinating. Really interesting.
Let me ask you that.
You can ask me
Why do
anything
you
you want.
think? Why do you think we should have borders?
So I found when someone says, "Let me ask you something," a really good response is, "Sure, anything you want," because from the book, it's a modeling behavior. That they're more likely to let you ask them anything you want.
Or do you think we should have borders at all?
Well, I mean, I think the idea of having borders is that when people come in, it limits the number of people who come into the country.
Yeah.
And the Trump administration, I tried to get through 5 minutes without mentioning Trump. I failed. But the Trump administration wants borders to prevent, like criminal elements from coming in.
But why don't we have a border in Canada, between Canada and the U.S.?
Okay, that truly threw me for a loop.
We do.
Where it's not a real border.
So that's interesting, a real border. So maybe he was conceptualizing borders differently than I was, which means that the fault was with myself, that I should have, again, from the book, focus in on words. And I just went in with the assumption that we had the same idea of what a border was.
There's no wall dividing Canada and the U.S.
I was just in Canada for a conference, and when I'm 53, when I was a kid, you could just get in with your license.
Yeah.
Now you have to have your passport. Oh, so you're talking about like a trenches and stuff.
Yeah. So I'm talking about that type of border, like a real
So here we go. Border, trenches.
wall. Like they actually want to build a real wall.
Well, North Korea and South Korea have a demilitarized zone. That's a border.
yeah, of course.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's one country that has a
Yeah.
border.
So then I gave an example. It wasn't particularly data driven, but it was a grossly conspicuous example of a border. And one of the points to that, my doing that, was to see if he would agree or disagree. Now, if he had disagreed with that, then we were just not operating in the same reality, and then I would have had a different goal for the conversation. But he did agree, so that meant that there was some common understanding of reality from which we could proceed.
Yeah.
How many countries would you, if I could show you a map, how many countries would you have to see that had borders before you would lower your confidence that the U.S. shouldn't have borders?
Again, the key is if I could show you, so these are hypotheticals, not here's a map, but no pulling out the phone, no data points, no, just asking him. Again, relating it back to scales, calibrating confidence, and disconfirmation criteria. All of these factors operate together in tandem.
I mean, besides North Korea and South Korea, what other country has a border?
So the key is for me not to provide something there, given the whole China-Russia thing. But I also have clarified that he means trenches now, like what I consider to be, World War I borders.
Well, I mean, I don't know, like how many, like if I could show you to your satisfaction.
Disconfirmation. Show if I could show you hypothetically to your satisfaction.
I'm not going to do it, but let's just, because I don't know if it's the case. I think it is, but how many countries would I have to show you before you lowered your confidence?
And that's the syllogism thing. That's asking him about the validity of his belief, not the factual claim of his belief.
I mean, none. There's no way you can lower my confidence about having borders.
None. Okay, so that's interesting. So that then something is amiss there with none.
But your belief on that we should have borders.
I made a mistake. I said but. I should have said okay.
That we shouldn't have borders.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
It's important to look at someone when you say sorry. And it's important to say sorry if you've mischaracterized their position so they know it's not intentional.
Your belief that we shouldn't have borders is based on the fact that other countries don't have borders.
No, I just feel like it's not like why should we have borders when it's open land,
Okay, so then we're changing the nature of the claim, and at that point, then you have to go back to what we talk about in chapter 2 of goals of the conversation.
It's more like it's not humanitarian to have borders. It's not part of for example, it's not part of our history to have borders. It's not human history.
So
More
we're running
like-
out of time real quick. So should we determine how we act as a people based upon what's part of our history?
Again, a type of naturalistic fallacy, but asking him.
How can I put that down?
Because slavery is part of our history,
Yeah.
but we don't.
So I should have waited longer, but I had run out on the timer. That would have been a really good point to let him think about that before I gave the example, or better yet, ask him if he could think of an example and see if he came up with slavery. So if I had a little more time, that's what I would have done.
No one buys into that anymore.
Yes, they do. Slavery's still around.
In the United States?
Yeah.
Okay, so that also threw me for a loop, which made me think that we have very different reality tunnels.
The prison system.
And then he defined slavery. I was just going to ask him for definition, but we had run out of time at this point.
That's still
No,
slavery.
I mean like buying and selling people.
Yeah. I mean, of course you're not buying and selling people no more, but slavery's still around. That's just talking about.
We're out of time. Thanks, man. I appreciate the conversation. Thank you. Cool.
So I don't really know what happened. That conversation didn't have the resolution that I wanted it to. I should have ended it a little bit sooner to make sure that it ended on an up note so that he had a positive experience of the conversation afterward. I was just so caught up in this, like, you know, really rather remarkable claims that I had difficulty getting my mind around it. And I wasn't sure if I was just misunderstanding or he was misinformed or something both. But I think the other mistake that I made was, and often this happens, and we write about this in the book, with difficult words that are slippery or thick, as they're referred to in philosophy. But I didn't think that would be the case with the word border. Now, it could be the case with the word sport or with the word gay, but border was pretty clear to me. But evidently, it wasn't clear, so I placed that on myself. I really should have asked to clarify that. It would have expedited those sticky elements of the conversation.
That's what we do. Talk about things no one wants to talk about. Cool. I gotta say, I'm loving that, man. That's looking super cool.